nearly half a century, the world held its breath. The superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, locked in a struggle that defined an era. This wasn't a war fought with marching armies on traditional battlefields. This was the Cold War, a conflict waged in the shadows, in the minds of leaders, and on the brink of nuclear annihilation. But what really happened behind the Iron Curtain and inside the White House? Today, we're pulling back the veil on the secrets from both sides of this epic confrontation. The end of World War II didn't bring peace. It brought a new kind of tension. The world was split into the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. This division wasn't just ideological, it was physical. In 1946, Winston Churchill famously declared that an Iron Curtain had descended across Europe, separating a free and democratic West from a totalitarian East. This set the stage for decades of mistrust and hostility. The first major flashpoint was Berlin. After the war, Germany and its capital were divided among the victorious Allies, but Berlin was deep inside Soviet-controlled East Germany. In 1948, Stalin decided to squeeze the Western Allies out. He blockaded all road and rail access to West Berlin, hoping to starve the city into submission. The U.S. response was audacious, the Berlin airlift. For nearly a year, American and British planes flew round-the-clock missions, delivering food, fuel, and supplies. It was a logistical marvel and a huge political victory. The message was clear: the West would not abandon its allies. The blockade failed, but the division of Germany and Berlin would become a permanent symbol of the Cold War. As tensions rose, so did the stakes. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb, ending America's nuclear monopoly. The arms race had begun. Both sides poured massive resources into building more powerful and more numerous nuclear weapons. This created a terrifying new reality known as mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The idea was simple and chilling. If one side launched a nuclear attack, the other would retaliate with overwhelming force, ensuring the destruction of both nations. The world was now living under a constant nuclear shadow. How close did we come to the end? Closer than many people realize. The most famous near miss was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1960 to U.S. Spy planes discovered Soviet nuclear missile sites under construction in Cuba, just 90 miles from the coast of Florida. President John F. Kennedy's administration was thrown into crisis. For 13 terrifying days, the world watched as Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev engaged in a high-stakes standoff. A naval blockade, or quarantine as Kennedy called it, was placed around Cuba. Tense negotiations happened behind the scenes. At one point, a Soviet submarine, cut off from Moscow, was moments away from launching a nuclear torpedo after being harassed by U.S. destroyers. Only the refusal of one Soviet officer, Vasily Arkhipov, prevented a launch that would have undoubtedly started World War III. In the end, a secret deal was struck. The Soviets would remove the missiles from Cuba, and in return, the U.S. would secretly remove its own missiles from Turkey. Disaster was averted, but it was a sobering wake-up call for both superpowers. But not all the battles were fought on the diplomatic stage. A secret war was raging, fought by spies and covert agents. The CIA in the West and the KGB in the East were locked in a constant game of cat and mouse. They recruited defectors, planted moles, and conducted sophisticated surveillance operations. One of the most famous examples was the Utah incident in 1960. The U.S. had been flying high-altitude spy planes, the Utah South, over the Soviet Union for years, taking detailed photographs of military installations. The Americans believed they were invincible, flying to high for Soviet defenses. They were wrong. On May 1, 1960, a Utah piloted by Francis Gary Powers was shot down. Initially, the U.S. claimed it was a weathered plane that had strayed off course. But then Khrushchev revealed that they had not only the wreckage, but also the pilot alive. It was a massive international embarrassment for the United States and torpedoed a planned peace summit in Paris. The spy games weren't just about technology, they were about people. Agents like Aldrich Ames, a high-ranking CIA officer, became a mole for the KGB, betraying dozens of U.S. assets inside the Soviet Union, many of whom were executed. On the other side, figures like Oleg Penkovsky, a Soviet military intelligence colonel, provided the West with crucial information, including details about the very missiles placed in Cuba before he was caught and executed. These were the invisible soldiers of the Cold War, and their stories are a testament to the personal risks and betrayals that defined this era. The competition also extended into a new frontier, space. When the Soviets launched Sputnik, the world's first artificial satellite, in 1957, it sent shockwaves through America. It was a technological and propaganda victory for the USSR. The space race was on. The US poured billions into its own space program, NASA. The Soviets scored another first when Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space in 1961. But the ultimate prize was the moon. In 1969, when Neil Armstrong took his one small step, it was a monumental achievement for humanity, but also a decisive victory for the United States in the Cold War's technological showdown. The Cold War was also fought through proxy wars. Instead of fighting each other directly, the superpowers backed opposing sides in conflicts around the globe. In Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, American and Soviet interests collided, leading to devastating wars that cost millions of lives. In Vietnam, the U.S. fought to contain the spread of communism, pouring in troops and resources for over a decade in a brutal and divisive conflict. In Afghanistan, the tables were turned. The CIA armed and trained the Mujahideen fighters to resist the Soviet invasion in 1979, creating a long, drawn-out war that became known as the Soviet Union's Vietnam. These conflicts bled both superpowers of resources and morale. So how did it all end? By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was in deep trouble. Its centrally planned economy was stagnant. The costly war in Afghanistan was a disaster, and the renewed arms race initiated by U.S. President Ronald Reagan, including the ambitious Star Wars missile defense program, put immense pressure on the Soviet budget. A new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, came to power in 1985. He knew that the system was broken. He introduced radical reforms, glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring. He hoped to save Soviet communism, but instead, he unleashed forces he couldn't control. The desire for freedom, long suppressed, erupted across Eastern Europe. In 1989, in a moment that captivated the world, the Berlin Wall, the most potent symbol of the Cold War, came down. Citizens from East and West Germany climbed the wall, celebrating together, tearing it apart piece by piece with hammers and chisels. It was the beginning of the end. One by one, the communist regimes of Eastern Europe collapsed. Finally, in 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved. The Cold War was over. The legacy of the Cold War is complex. It was a time of incredible danger when humanity lived on a knife's edge, but it was also a period of immense scientific progress and ideological struggle that reshaped the world map. The secrets we've uncovered today, the near misses, the spy games, the proxy wars show just how close we came to a different, much darker outcome. It's a powerful reminder of the delicate balance between conflict and diplomacy, and the profound consequences of a world divided. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the secret history of the Cold War. If you found this fascinating, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you do miss our next deep dive into the stories that shaped our world. See you next time.